Chapter 208. Thus, she once again went to the place where the scholar had lived. After wandering around for a while, she entered the mountains not far away to cultivate. Time passed quickly in the mountains, and several hundred years passed in the outside world. When she came out of the mountains again, she was a beautiful woman who had taken human form. In the past few hundred years, aside from returning to the Fox clan once every 10 years, she devoted herself to cultivating wholeheartedly. When her mother discovered that her daughter's cultivation outside was actually much faster than in the Fox clan, she acquiesced to her daughter's freedom and allowed her to cultivate outside for long periods of time. Another 10 years later, when she returned from the Fox clan, she went to the place where the scholar had lived. To her surprise, she discovered that a new thatched hut had been built there. Hearing the sound of someone reading a book, she could not help but walk over to take a look. When she looked out the window, her body immediately shook. It was another scholar, and he looked very similar to the one from back then. That scholar had suddenly discovered such a beautiful woman and was also dumbfounded. Thus, something happened that caused the entire Fox clan to be enraged. The ancestors of this branch of the Fox clan had passed down a strict rule that no matter if the Fox clan was male or female, they were not allowed to have an ill-fated relationship with any human in the secular world. Otherwise, they would be executed. When she returned to the Fox clan, she knew that she would inevitably die, but who would have thought that she would be saved by the male branch of the Fox clan? The Fox clan was split into two branches, male and female. It had always been the female branch that held the position of clan leader. Who would have thought that the head of the male branch would find her mother, who was the clan leader of the entire Fox clan? He said that he was willing to protect her daughter's life, but the condition was that she would pass on the position of clan leader to the male branch. It was natural for one to lick one's calf, so the female clan leader agreed. As a result, the male branch mobilized a powerful force and used more than half of the people to forcefully violate the rules that had been in place for countless years, finally protecting Bai Sujin's life. She could escape punishment, but she could not escape the fate of being banished. Her mother also passed on the 4 treasures of the Snow clan, which symbolized the authority of the clan leader, to the male branch under great pressure. The male branch finally got his wish and rightfully obtained the position of the clan leader. The rules of the Snow Fox clan that had lasted for countless years were finally broken. Yu Qianqiu knew what happened after that. After listening, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect these 4 treasures to have such an origin. No wonder Bai Sujin was so excited. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Since they are the inheritance treasures of your Fox clan, how did they end up here? It must have something to do with the male line of your Fox clan. I don't know. Bai Sujin painfully shook her head and said, "Let me go. I want to go back to the extreme north to take a look. Although I have already been banished from the Fox clan, I want to see what happened to the Fox clan. Why would the inheritance treasures end up in the auction house?" Yu Qianqiu hugged her and sincerely said, "Don't be anxious. Wait until I find out the origin of these 4 treasures. It won't be too late for you to go. Otherwise, you won't be able to come up with any conclusions if you run around without thinking. You have to trust me and wait patiently for a period of time." Bai Sujin clearly didn't want to wait any longer. "Listen to me, okay?" Yu Qianqiu indifferently said to her. Bai Sujin seemed to have no immunity to his words. She dejectedly lowered her head and agreed. Yu Qianqiu suddenly frowned and said, "These 4 treasures have been passed down in your Fox clan for so many years. Could it be that Little Snow is related to your Fox clan?" Bai Sujin, whose emotions had gradually calmed down, suddenly realized that she was in his arms. Her charming face instantly blushed. She slightly lowered her head and replied with her body trembling uncontrollably, "In ancient times, Little Snow was a member of my Fox clan. Legend has it that she was a soul formation stage expert of my Fox clan. Later on, she followed a human man called Rookie to cultivate. When she returned, she used her martial power to unite the Fox clan that was originally scattered in the extreme north. That was how the extreme north unified the Snow Fox clan. Those clan rules that were passed down were set by her. Little Snow is also from the Fox clan?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. So the divine craftsman was as great as him. He also had a fox spirit with a profound cultivation by his side. That's right. Our fox clan doesn't know how to refine weapons. Most of the treasures we use are refined by that human called Immortal. They were brought back by Little Snow. Other than what Little Snow used, most of the other treasures have Imortal's name on them, including the mountain-piercing claw that you used. Speaking up to here, Bai Suzhen took the opportunity to escape from his arms. She took out the mountain-piercing claw and opened it for him to read. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully and found the words Imortal in a lighter color. He really didn't expect that he had already used the treasures refined by the divine craftsman. He nodded and sighed, so that's how it is. I understand. Since these are the treasures of your fox clan, you can keep them first. Looking at the sky that was already slightly brightening, he continued, I will go and find out how these treasures got here. Don't worry and leave it to me. Oh right, I still need you to take care of my family. After saying that, he disappeared. In fact, the last sentence was because he was afraid that she would miss her clan too much, so he purposely told her to do something to distract her. After Yu Qianqiu returned, he sorted out the details of the whole matter. He opened the door and directly knocked on the door of Wu Liqing's room, who was accompanying guests at the quiet guest house. The latter heard the sound and opened the door. He was stunned and said, Yu Qianqiu? What's the matter? Bring me to your grandfather. I have something to talk to him about. Yu Qianqiu said directly. Now? Wu Liqing looked at the sky outside and said doubtfully, isn't it a little too early? The commotion here had also attracted Bai Zitsong and the other two. They all asked, what's the matter? Yu Qianqiu ignored the others and dragged him out, don't be so long-winded. I have something important to talk to your grandfather about. Bring me there quickly. Wu Liqing helplessly led him and the others out of the quiet guest house. After arriving at the living room of the largest manor in the Wu clan, he asked him to wait for a while and went to look for his grandfather. Not long after, Wu Sihai arrived. He also looked at the sky, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked curiously, what do you want from me? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, if there's nothing important, why would I disturb you so early in the morning? Wu Sihai smiled and said, oh. He looked at the others and said, what's the matter? Do you want to avoid them? We are all brothers. There's no need to avoid them. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. The others looked at each other and felt a little warmth in their hearts. It must be something important to look for me at this time. Come with me. This is not the place to talk. Wu Sihai said and led them to a secret room. He turned around and asked, what's the matter? Just say it. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and said bluntly, I want to know who the seller of the 4 sets of treasures is. Bai Zitsong and the others looked at each other. Why did he ask this again at this time? Wu Sihai was startled. He put his hands behind his back and shook his head with a smile. I already said that I can't tell you about this. This matter concerns the reputation of the entire Wu clan auction house. Moreover, the seller didn't show his face from the beginning. How can I know who it is? Someone auctioned 5 artifacts refined by a divine craftsman at once. How can you not know who it is? Even if you haven't seen it before, I believe that even if a bird flew across your Wu clan's territory, you would be able to tell its gender, let alone a living person. Otherwise, this place wouldn't be called the Wu clan's territory. Alright, we are going a little too far. I promised you that as long as you tell me who the seller of these 4 treasures is, I will tell you Bai Changchun's whereabouts. After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he was afraid that it wasn't enough, so he added, I can basically confirm that this Bai Changchun is the ancestor of the Bai family. His cultivation has indeed reached the soul formation stage, I can guarantee you this. Ah! The others exclaimed in unison. This news was too important to the 4 major clans. Wu Sihai lost his composure and asked, are you serious? Don't worry. I am a man of my words. Even if I don't give face to the Wu clan patriarch, I will still give face to my 4 brothers. I won't lie to you. Yu Qianqiu smiled indifferently. What he was implying was that he didn't associate with the four major clans because of the power of the four major clans. Chapter 209. Wu Sihai hesitated for a moment, and then a trace of decisiveness flashed through his eyes. He nodded and said, "Deal." As expected of someone who's used to doing business. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Lord Master, who exactly is that person?" Wu Sihai's expression was solemn as he said, "This person has never revealed his true appearance, but as you said, our Wu clan has been operating here for many years. We naturally have our own methods to find out who he is. Not to mention the sudden appearance of a mysterious patron, even if it's for the safety of our Wu clan, we still have to find out who he is. It's just that we're quite shocked to find out who he is. I hope that you won't drag our Wu clan into this. This person's background isn't simple." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. "I know what to do even without your instructions. It won't be related to your Wu clan." "Who is it?" Wu Sihai frowned. "The young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, Yan Zhuixing." "It's him?" Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zizong, and the others exclaimed in surprise. The five of them looked at each other, and then they fell silent. They seemed to be surprised, but at the same time, it seemed to be reasonable. Wu Sihai glanced at them and asked, "What's wrong? Do you have a relationship with this person?" "Not really." Wu Liqing shook his head. "This person seems to be very friendly on the surface, and he likes to make friends. What happened to Shui in the gurgling house is indirectly related to him. She owed him a favor in the 100 Flowers Valley." "Friendly on the surface? What do you mean?" Wu Sihai stared at his grandson and asked. "He's very friendly and smart. He's so smart that I suspect he has ulterior motives, and we don't dare to get too close to him. Brother Yu, on the other hand, eats whatever he wants, and he doesn't hold back." Wu Liqing smiled. Yu Qianqiu glared and pretended to be angry. "What are you talking about? What do you mean I don't hold back? When did I skip your share? Do you think I'm the only one eating?" They looked at each other and were completely speechless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. In fact, Wu Liqing really wanted to say, "Every time we eat, you eat more than the four of us. Let's not talk about that for now." Wu Sihai waved his hand and said, "Yu Qianqiu, can you tell me where old ancestor Bai is now?" Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, "Can't you four clans give up on looking for him?" "No." Wu Sihai denied it right away. He sighed deeply and said, "You don't know what Patriarch Bai means to us four clans. It's not that we want to rely on him or anything. It's just that some people in the four clans think that it's meaningless for the four clans to be united for their own benefit. They are encouraging each other to set up their own sections. The situation is getting more and more intense. I don't know how many people are eyeing the four clans covetously. Once the four clans are separated, they are in danger of being annexed at any time. These people are short-sighted." Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept over by Zizong's group of four. He thought to himself, so it turns out that the four great clans are having internal strife. For Wu Sihai to say such words in front of these four people, it's likely that these four first successors don't agree with the idea of splitting the clan. Bai Zizong suddenly put a hand on his shoulder and sighed, "Brother Yu, say it. The four clans need old ancestor now." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "How much do you know about the demon domain?" "The demon domain?" They were shocked. Wu Sihai said in a low voice, "You mean old ancestor is in the demon domain?" "Yes, he is cultivating in seclusion in the center of the demon domain." "Are you sure that you four clans can enter there?" Yu Qianqiu asked. "The center of the demon domain. Why is old ancestor living in seclusion there?" Wu Sihai paced around and pondered. After a long time, he exhaled and said, "Rumor has it that the demon domain has the 10 great demon kings and the ghost king. All of them have extraordinary cultivation. I have never heard of anyone who can enter the center of the demon domain. My clan may not be able to do it, but with the strength of the four clans, it shouldn't be a problem." "Hee hee." Yu Qianqiu sneered disdainfully. "You four clans want to go deep into the center of the demon domain? The top 3 sects of the righteous and demon sects combined only dared to stay on the sky cloud peak, which was not far from the periphery of the demon domain. They didn't dare to go too far away from the sky cloud peak during the trial. Seeing him sneer, Wu Sihai was startled and said, "Do you think that the 4 clans can't reach the center of the demon domain?" Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, "I don't know how strong the 4 clans are, but I know that you are dreaming. You are talking about something that the 4 clans can't do. Not to mention the 4 clans, even if the entire Huaxia Empire were to join forces, they might not be able to enter the center of the demon domain." Bai Zizong and the others were shocked, but Wu Sihai shook his head and said, "Yu Qianzhou, do you know how big the Huaxia Empire is? How many cultivators are there?" Yu Qianzhou said expressionlessly, "I don't care how big the Huaxia Empire is, but I know that the entire demon domain has a radius of tens of millions of miles. It is at least several times the size of the Huaxia Empire." "Hey! The demon domain has such a large area?" Wu Sihai was startled, then he changed the topic and said with a smile, "Although the demon domain is powerful, don't underestimate the cultivation world of the Huaxia Empire. It is different from what you see on the surface." According to the information collected by the Wu clan over the years, there are hundreds of cultivators in the final stage of the passing calamity stage who rarely show themselves. If these people join forces, where can't we go? The 10 great demon kings and the 10 ghost king can't stop them. Humph. Yu Qianzhou snorted and said, "Old master, do you really think that the entire demon domain only has the 10 great demon kings and the 10 ghost king?" Isn't it?" Wu Sihai asked. "Old master, I told you where the ancestor of the Bai clan is, so there is no need to talk nonsense. However, for the sake of my 4 brothers, there are some things I still have to remind your 4 clans." After a pause, Yu Qianzhou said word by word, "Old master, listen carefully. The periphery of the demon domain is guarded by the 10 great demon kings and the 10 ghost king. A demon king and a ghost king jointly control a territory. The demon king is in charge of the yang, and the ghost king is in charge of the yin. This is the periphery, and the inside is the most chaotic and dangerous place in the demon domain. There are probably nearly 10,000 demon kings and ghost king who have reached the final stage of the passing calamity stage. As for the other countless demons and ghosts, it is needless to say." He. "Old master, do you still think the power of your 4 clans can enter the central area of the demon domain? I'm afraid that none of you can come out alive." They were stunned. Wu Sihai swallowed and said, "Nearly 10,000 demon kings and ghost king. How is this possible? If the demon domain had such strength, wouldn't it have occupied the human territory a long time ago?" Humph. There are naturally secrets that outsiders don't know. Maybe you will have a chance to find out in the future. That's all I have to say, the 4 clans should know." Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands and said to Bai Zizong and the others, "Thank you for your hospitality these days. I have something to do and have to leave. My 4 brothers, goodbye." "Wait." Wu Sihai stopped him and frowned. "According to what you said, the 4 clans have no chance to find the ancestor at all. But I have never heard of what you said. Why are you so familiar with the situation of the demon domain?" Chapter 210. He was doubting what he had said. Yu Qianzhou smiled. "It's okay if you haven't heard of it. You'll know when you get to the monster ghost region." "You're so sure? Have you gone deep into the monster ghost region?" Wu Sihai asked. Yu Qianzhou's heart skipped a beat. He curled his lips and said, "I can't say deep. I've been touring around the monster ghost region for a few days. I just have some friendship with the ghost king that you mentioned." They were shocked again. This guy's secrets had been peeled off one layer after another. Wu Sihai put on a look of disbelief and said, "As far as I know, the 10 great monster kings and the 10 ghost kings never interact with people from the outside world. You said that you have some friendship with them. Forgive me for finding it hard to believe. I even doubt that what you said about the Bai clan's ancestor is true." Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at Wu Sihai in surprise. They wondered why he would say such rude words. Yu Qianqiu smiled calmly. Old man, what I said is true. I can't help it if you don't believe me. Time is the best proof. In short, I have a clear conscience. Wu Sihai looked at him and said, You said that you have some friendship with the Ghost King of the Monster Ghost region. Do you have any evidence that can convince me? If you do, you can show me. It will make me feel at ease. Old fox. Yu Qianqiu sneered secretly. He scratched his head and smiled bitterly. I really don't know how to prove it. Old man, among the 10 ghost kings of the Monster Ghost region, there's a ghost general called the Ghost King. Have you heard of him? The ghost general of the Monster Ghost region. He was born at the wrong time. Even after his death, he is always in pain and regrets. He cries every night. Wu Sihai paced and murmured. He suddenly turned around and said, The ghost general should be the Ghost King. If you are talking about him, I have heard of him. This ghost general seems to be the only well-known ghost king in the Huaxia cultivation world. You mean him? Do you have some friendship with the ghost general? Bai Zitsong and the others looked at Yu Qianqiu. The latter nodded and said, It seems that only he is known in the Huaxia cultivation world. I have some friendship with him and I have some evidence. I just don't know if you believe me. Wu Sihai raised his eyebrows. Then he calmed down and said calmly, Then you might as well say it first. It seems that if I don't tell you something, you will treat me as a liar. But let me make it clear in advance. There are some things that only the 4 families know. Don't tell it to anyone else. Otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you when you get into trouble. Yu Qianqiu warned him deliberately. Of course. Wu Sihai nodded repeatedly. His eyes had lit up because of his words. Maybe he could know some unknown secrets. People were born to be curious. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly and said slowly, This ghost general was a general who fought with the ancestors of the Li family in the previous dynasty. He was defeated and died. By chance, he became a ghost cultivator. After his cultivation was successful, he gathered his old subordinates who died in the battle and gathered hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators. Finally, he became a ghost king of the Monster Ghost region. His original name is Meng Yan. What? The ghost general is Meng Yan? Wu Sihai suddenly lost his voice. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, Why? You know him? But in his heart, he muttered, That's impossible. Wu Sihai said in a deep voice, In history, there was indeed an iron-blooded general who fought with the Li clan's ancestors for the world. His name was Meng Yan. He was supposed to be the winner, but because the cultivation world intervened in the war, he died with a grudge. Heh. Your Fu Xian Island is the culprit. Continue with what you said. So it was history. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes for free and continued, Meng Yan had a beautiful concubine named Yu Ji. The 2 of them lived happily in the Monster Ghost region. I have a good relationship with the couple. When I was playing in the Monster Ghost region, they treated me warmly and gave me a Ghost King token. Whether it is a demon or a ghost, they have to give me some face when they see this token. When I was playing in the Monster Ghost region, I avoided being disappointed by some small fries. That's the general relationship between me and Ghost General. As for whether I can make you believe me or not, I can't do anything about it. He said it casually, but they didn't know that it shocked them. This guy was actually playing in the Monster Ghost region that everyone in the cultivation world was afraid of. Was there any justice in this world? This sounded a little absurd, but the few of them firmly believed it because the story behind this fellow could not be judged by common sense. Wu Sihai swallowed his saliva and coughed. Since Ghost General gave you a Ghost King token, I wonder if you can let me take a look. You have to know that the Wu clan is famous for their eyesight. We can tell whether it's real or fake with just one look. Not only him, but even Bai Zitsong and the rest felt a little embarrassed. Who knew what the Ghost King token was? No matter how good the old man's eyesight was, he couldn't recognize it, right? The few of them could already guess what he was planning. Old fox, I knew you would have your eyes on my token. You took the bait. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. He scratched his head and said, I don't even know if I have it with me. Let me take a look first. He reached into his storage bag and searched for a while. After a while, he said, found it. A pitch-black token was raised in Yu Qianqiu's hand. There were some simple carvings around it, but in the middle was a pair of deep eyes. It was demonic and captivating. The few of them looked carefully and were immediately stunned. Their expressions gradually became sluggish. Their entire mind was filled with that pair of cold and demonic eyes. Following that, an awe-inspiring general wearing golden armor appeared in their minds and gradually matched the pair of eyes. The general's robe was fluttering behind him. He was holding a sword in his hand. He was staring at them indifferently as if he was looking at a group of ants. Oh no. There's something strange about this token. Wu Sihai, who was in the middle stage of calamity passing, was shocked. He bit the tip of his tongue. The pain woke him up. As for Bai Zitsong and the other three, because their cultivation was not high, their minds were immersed in it and could not extricate themselves. The former blocked in front of the token and shouted, Wake up! Bai Zitsong and the rest who were mesmerized by the token trembled. They woke up as if they were in a dream. Their faces were filled with disbelief. It really is the Ghost King's token. Wu Sihai turned around and asked, Can I take a look? Old man, it's just a broken token. What's so special about it? Yu Qianqiu generously gave it to him. The Ghost King's token is a broken token? Wu Sihai's face twitched. He took the token and examined it. He tried to avoid looking at the pair of eyes. After a long time, he exhaled and praised, Good stuff. This Ghost King's token is made of the rare nether iron. TSK. Normal ghost cultivators can't get their hands on this. It really belongs to the Ghost King. What's nether iron? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It was his first time hearing about it. Wu Sihai held the token and explained, Ghost cultivators and demon cultivators are different from us cultivators. They don't rely on absorbing spiritual energy to increase their cultivation. They rely on absorbing yin energy. Yin energy usually comes from underground caves. They are divided into 9 levels. The first level is the nether cave, the second level is the nether cave, and all the way up to the 9 nether cave. The higher the level of the cave, the stronger the yin energy and the stronger the yin wind. The 9 nether cave is the highest level. Even ghost cultivators at the end of the Ghost King can't withstand it. They will be killed by the yin wind if they dare to enter. Under normal circumstances, ghost cultivators at the end of the Ghost King's cultivation can only stay in the 8 nether cave to absorb yin energy. As for the 9 nether cave, only the legendary ghost sage dares to enter. The ghost sage's cultivation is equivalent to our legendary soul-forming stage. This nether iron is a treasure that can only be found in caves that are level 8 and above. Chapter 2:11. Compared to the mystic gold sand I bought last time, which one is better? Yu Qianqiu asked. Mystic gold sand? Wu Sihai laughed, the two are not on the same level at all. Mystic gold sand can at most be used to refine treasures, while nether iron can be used to refine spiritual treasures. Which one do you think is better? Of course, no matter how good the item is, it needs the skill to refine it. This nether iron has the innate ability to absorb souls. The corpse sect of the demonic Tao has a magic weapon made of nether iron. They have captured many rogue cultivators and absorbed their souls. Those rogue cultivators are like walking corpses, which is why they are ranked 3rd in the demonic Tao. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu muttered, then the next time I meet Ghost General, I will ask him to help me get more nether iron. Although his voice was low, they all looked at each other. It seemed that this guy's relationship with Ghost General was not ordinary. Wu Sihai coughed and said, Yu Qianqiu, can I discuss something with you? Here it comes. The old fox is finally showing his tail. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart, but nodded on the surface and said, Just say it, Old Master. Since both demons and ghosts in the demon region have to show some respect when they see this token, and it is useless to keep it with you, why don't you lend it to the 4 families first? We will return it to you after we find the old ancestor. We will definitely thank you after that. What do you think? Wu Sihai said a little unnaturally. After a long time, they finally got to the point. Bai Zitsong and the other 3 turned their heads to the side as if nothing had happened. In fact, if you paid attention, you could see that they were a little embarrassed. Old Master, that's a good idea. Yu Qianqiu took the token from his hand and threw it directly into the storage bag. He smiled and said, "It's not that I don't want to lend it to you, but this token is useful to me, but it is useless to you." Wu Sihai watched helplessly as the Ghost King token was taken away. He even had the urge to snatch it back. Suppressing his emotions, he frowned and asked, "Why do you say that?" "When Meng Yan gave me the token, he told me again and again not to give it to anyone else. If the 4 great clans go to the Demon Ghost region and flash the Ghost King token, I believe it won't take long for Meng Yan to find out. Once he finds out that the token is in your hands, he believed that Meng Yan's hundreds of thousands of troops were not just for show. At that time, in a fit of rage, Meng Yan has many experts under him. If Old Master thinks that the 4 great families can fight against Ghost General, I can let you try. What I'm afraid of is that this token won't be of any help to you. It would be bad if you end up attracting even more trouble." That fellow Meng Yan's temper wasn't good. There was also the Demon King Aoli, who shared the same roots as him. "Old Master, I advise you to give up on this idea." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled. Wu Sihai was a little dumbfounded. He had calculated for a long time and thought that he was close. Who knew that his dream would be destroyed by Yu Qianqiu? After a while, he pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Who is the Demon King Aoli? One of the 10 great demon kings? Is his relationship with Ghost General good?" Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yes. He is one of the 10 great demon kings. He is the lord of a territory with Ghost General. The 2 of them are like brothers. One is in charge of Yang, and the other is in charge of Yin. Ma Jiugu of supporting Immortal Island was defeated by him. Even Ma Jiugu of supporting Immortal Island, who is in the late tribulation passing stage, is no match for Demon King Aoli." Wu Sihai could no longer pretend, and his face twitched. It should be known that Ma Jiugu was the #1 expert not only in supporting Immortal Island, but also in the entire Chinese cultivation world. Her Demon Slayer wand was rarely matched. Unexpectedly, she was defeated by a demon king who is also in the late tribulation passing stage. The 10 great demon kings of the devil domain were indeed worthy of their reputation. Wu Sihai sighed softly and looked a little dispirited. One Ghost General was already difficult to deal with. Now there was Demon King Aoli, and there were many Ghost King and Demon Kings. It seemed that even if he knew the whereabouts of the ancestor, it would be difficult to meet him again. Seeing him in a daze, Yu Qianqiu laughed inwardly, but he still put on a serious face and said, "Old Master, you don't need to be discouraged. If you really want to go, at worst, I'll accompany your 4 great families to the demon realm after I finish my business." Wu Sihai's eyes lit up and said, "Are you serious?" "What do you mean by serious?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and pointed at Bai Zitsong's group of 4. He said, "I only made this trip because of my 4 brothers. Do you think I have nothing better to do after eating my fill?" Bai Zitsong and the other 3 were delighted. They exchanged glances and cupped their fists to thank him. Wu Sihai said happily, "What do you want to do? Our 4 families may not be comparable to supporting Immortal Island, but we have some ability. Do you need our help?" "Sure." Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and said seriously, "Using the 4 families is making a mountain out of a molehill. It's enough with your Wu family's help. Old Master, can you help me ask Yan Juixing of 100 Flower Palace where he got the 4 treasures of Shao Shui?" Wu Sihai's smile froze on his face. After a while, he said awkwardly, "It's not convenient for my Wu family to take action. Is there anything else that you need my Wu family's help with?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand indifferently and said, "Forget it. I'll look for you when I have something else. Just don't shirk it again." Hee hee. "I'll help as long as I can." Wu Sihai smiled awkwardly. He felt that something was wrong no matter how he thought about it. It felt like he was being schemed against by Yu Qianqiu. "Oh. Then I hope that the next time I ask for your help will be within your scope." Yu Qianqiu's tone sounded like he didn't have any hope for the Wu family. The more they talked about it, the more embarrassed Wu Sihai felt. He immediately changed the topic and said, "Why do you want to know where the 4 treasures came from?" Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and didn't hide anything. He said in a deep voice, "There's a demon clan in the extreme north called the Snow Fox Clan. Xiao Shui, who followed the divine craftsman in ancient times, was the first clan leader of the Snow Fox Clan. The 4 treasures that the divine craftsman refined are the tokens of the Snow Fox Clan's clan leader. I want to know how the treasures of the Snow Fox Clan ended up in Yan Zhuixing's hands." "Ah. Xiao Shui is from the demon clan?" Wu Sihai was surprised. Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at each other. Bai Zizong then asked, "The extreme north should be out of the Hua Xia Empire's territory. How do you know about it?" "I just heard about it. I was once entrusted by someone and nearly forgot about it. I only recalled it last night and came to ask you about it." Yu Qianqiu casually said a few words and cupped his hands. "Let's not talk anymore. I will make a trip back to the 100 Flowers Valley first. I will come back to discuss with the 4 major clans about the trip to the demon region." "Wait. I have something to tell you." Wu Sihai stopped Jiang Yi and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "My Wu clan already knows about the Yu clan's matter in Swallow Zicheng. I believe the other factions will know soon, too. I believe the supporting Immortal Island won't be an exception. There's also on Kwangsung. I reckon they won't let you off so easily. You better be careful." Chapter 212. There was a short moment of silence in the secret room. Apart from the Wu clan's grandfather-grandson duo and Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zizong and the others were confused and didn't know what kind of riddle they were playing. Yu Qianqiu's thoughts were spinning rapidly. Even the Wu clan knew about his background, and the supporting Immortal Island naturally wouldn't be able to hide it from them. He sneered and said that Lu Chongqing was courting death. He actually dared to extend his claws to my clansmen in the secular world. If I don't kill him, should I let him off? If it's a blessing, it won't be a calamity, and if it's a calamity, it can't be avoided. I hope that An Kwangsung knows his place and doesn't provoke me again. If he angers me, I will remove An Kwangsung's name from the cultivation world." His words contained traces of chilling intent, and everyone quivered. Bai Zizong, Tan Fei, and Jing Zuo looked at one another in dismay. An Kwangsung's patriarch, Lu Chongqing, was actually killed by him. They sighed silently and weren't worried about Yu Qianqiu. Instead, they were worried for An Kwangsung. An Kwangsung's patriarch was killed, and he definitely wouldn't let Yu Qianqiu off. However, this fellow's background was truly unfathomable. Could An Kwangsung win against him? "My Wu clan will send a few people to escort you to the 100 Flower Palace." Wu Sihai frowned and said. He was worried that if something happened to Yu Qianqiu, his 4 major clans' trip to the Demon Ghost region would be ruined. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "No need. An Kwangsung can't do anything to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stay in the cultivation world." Seeing that he was stubborn, they didn't say anything else and walked out of the secret room. When they walked to the entrance of the main hall, a Wu clan's disciple suddenly ran over and reported, "Clan head, Elder Dongfang Chang, AO of Supporting Immortal Island wants us to pass a message to Supporting Immortal Island's disciple Yu Qianqiu, asking him to return to Supporting Immortal Island's shop." "Got it." Wu Sihai waved his hand, and the disciple retreated. After confirming that Yu Qianqiu wanted to go back immediately, he cast a spell to the guards on the nearby tower, asking Wu Licheng and the other 3 to lead Yu Qianqiu and fly out on their flying swords. When the 5 of them arrived at Supporting Immortal Island's shop, Yuan was waiting at the entrance, and he immediately brought them to the back of the shop. Dongfang Cheng Ao was standing in the courtyard with his hands behind his back, and there were two other elders who came with him on both sides. Yu Qianqiu quickly bowed to the three of them, and Bai Zizong and the other three bowed in turn and said, "The four major clans Bai Zizong, Tan Fei, Jingzhua, and Wu Licheng, greet the three seniors." The elders on both sides held the armrests of the four of them, indicating that they didn't need to be overly courteous. At this moment, Dongfang Cheng Ao turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu, and he said in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, why do you have trouble wherever you go? The moment you arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley, you beat up sect leader An Kuansung's grandson, and when you arrived at Hat Island, you beat up the Luo sect leader's son. Do you think that you haven't caused enough trouble for supporting Immortal Island?" "Elder Dongfang, I was forced to do this. These two people really deserved a beating, and they were the ones who started it both times. I was just defending myself, otherwise, would have lost face for supporting Immortal Island," Yu Qianqiu said with a little grievance. Bai Zizong and the other three were stunned. How was this still the arrogant Yu Qianqiu? Yuan didn't say a word. The other two elders looked at each other, and their lips curled into a smile. They were actually very satisfied with Yu Qianqiu's way of doing things. During this period of time, the whole cultivation world was talking about how this disciple of supporting Immortal Island was doing, beating up this sect leader's son, and then beating up that sect leader's son. Good. He really made supporting Immortal Island proud. Humph. I won't talk about the past. Tell me honestly, did you get into trouble again? Dongfang Cheng Ao stared at him and asked. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "No. I have been staying in the Wu clan, and apart from beating up that Luo Shaohan, I didn't do anything else." "Then why did An Kuansung's old ancestor Qing Nu personally come to supporting Immortal Island to look for you, and even made the sect leader send a message to bring you back to supporting Immortal Island immediately?" Dongfang Cheng Ao shouted. It was exposed. Bai Zizong and the other three secretly exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he said, "An Kuansung's old ancestor Qing Nu? I don't even know him, why is he looking for me?" He thought to himself, "I have never heard of this person in An Kuansung. Am I asking you, or are you asking me?" Dongfang Cheng Ao shouted again. Yu Qianqiu said with a bitter face, "Elder Dongfang, I am innocent. These few days, I have been following the four major clan successors closely, and I didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, you can ask them." Bai Zizong and the other three nodded, and they immediately cupped their fists in unison and said, "Elder Dongfang, the four of us can testify for Brother Yu. These few days, he really didn't do anything out of line." The successors of the four major clans still had some weight. Dongfang Cheng Ao looked at them, stood there for a moment, and said in a deep voice, "Follow me back to supporting Immortal Island first, we can talk about anything else when we get back." An elder at the side took out a flying artifact that looked like a small boat, and Yu Qianqiu obediently jumped onto it under everyone's gaze. After Dongfang Cheng Ao and the other two got on the boat, the small boat turned into a stream of light and flew away, leaving the people in the courtyard to send them off. Riding the wind, breaking through the clouds, they flew across the sky. Yu Qianqiu sat alone at the end, thinking about how to explain when he got back. An Kuansung's old ancestor Qing Nu came to supporting Immortal Island. Needless to say, Lu Changqing's matter was exposed. Sigh. Looks like the matter of finding Yan Zhuixing will have to be postponed. When they returned to supporting Immortal Island, the small boat directly landed in front of Penglai Pavilion, and they got off. Dongfang Cheng Ao led him upstairs, and the other two didn't follow. They didn't go to the sect master's room, but to a large room that was used to receive guests. As soon as they entered, Yu Qianqiu realized that the atmosphere inside was a little strange, and he secretly thought that something was wrong. After Dongfang Cheng Ao reported to the sect master, he also bowed to everyone. When he retreated to the side, the room was full of familiar people, including Master Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand. The two of them looked at him with a strange expression, but he didn't see a tall, white-haired old man in a green robe. He was standing beside sect master Feng Xiangtian, sizing him up. He must be Ang Kuansung's old ancestor. Qin knew. Feng Xiangtian frowned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, do you know your mistake?" "I know my mistake." Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed. Everyone in the room was stunned, but they heard him say, "Disciple shouldn't have caused trouble outside and brought trouble to the sect. Sect master, please give disciple another chance. Disciple will definitely change for the better." "So, did you really kill Ang Kuansung's sect master Lu Changqing?" Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice. Dongfang Chang Ao was shocked. He suspected that Yu Qianqiu had caused trouble again, but he didn't expect that he killed Ang Kuansung's sect master. How was that possible? "Ah! I killed Ang Kuansung's sect master." Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he said after a long time, "Sect master, did I hear it wrong? Did you say that I killed Ang Kuansung's sect master? Isn't that so?" Feng Xiangtian scoffed. "The matter has been investigated clearly, and you still want to quibble? Sect master, you must be mistaken. How could I kill Ang Kuansung's sect master?" Yu Qianqiu argued. Chapter 213. Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice, "Looks like you're going to resist till the end and refuse to admit it?" Yu Qianqiu stood there with a wronged look and didn't say a word. It was as if he didn't do it. How could he admit it? "You were originally a disciple of Ang Kuansung. Why did you join Fu Xian Island? Speak. What are your intentions?" Feng Xiangtian shouted. Although he said that, he couldn't bear it in his heart. Such a rare and good seedling was going to be destroyed here. Damn it. I'm exposed. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. Instead, he turned around and bowed deeply to Guan Weiwu. With a distressed expression, he said, "This disciple was originally a commoner in the mortal world. My family was quite wealthy, and I originally wanted to live a carefree life. Fortunately, my ancestors saved Ang Kuansung's sect master, Lu Changqing. In order to repay the kindness, Lu Changqing brought me to Ang Kuansung to cultivate even though I didn't have a spiritual root to cultivate. Then, I became master and disciple with sect master, Hao Sansi. Under the encouragement of my master, this disciple concentrated on training day and night, not daring to slack off for even a day. Perhaps it was heaven rewarding the diligent. I was a disciple of the Azure Light sect who had no spiritual roots and was humiliated by my fellow disciples. One day, I was enlightened and stepped into the refining chi stage. This should have been a happy event, but who would have thought that my master would warn me not to reveal a bit of my cultivation in front of others? At that time, this disciple didn't understand. Later, because my master was attacked and died, I was so angry that I exchanged a palm strike with the head's grandson Lu Jingguang and revealed my cultivation. Afterwards, I understood why my master repeatedly warned me not to reveal my cultivation. Yu Qianqiu looked at everyone and bowed to Guan Weiwu again. Sect master, Lu Changqing kept sending elders to ask me to reveal my cultivation secrets. But how could I have any cultivation secrets? I only know how to make up for my lack of cultivation with diligence. Because of this, I was demoted to a spirit stone mine to do hard labor. It was only a day after my master passed away. They couldn't wait any longer. So be it if you have to do hard labor. But the sect leader didn't want to let me go. He sent Elder Lu Wanxian to threaten and bribe me. I almost died in his hands several times, but I didn't know any cultivation secrets. How could I tell him? Then, one day, the magic illusion palace attacked the spirit stone mine. The dignified elder of the Ang Kuansung, Lu Wanwan, used me as a shield in order to escape. Fortunately, this disciple was lucky enough to survive. Looking at the whole spirit stone mine, I was disheartened and didn't think about cultivation anymore. So, I left quietly, thinking that it was just a nightmare and that I never came to Ang Kuansung. Everyone from the supporting Immortal's island sighed. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu had such a miserable experience. Imagine a disciple without spiritual roots suddenly being able to cultivate. Some sects would indeed use all kinds of means. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu was an exception with extraordinary talent? However, a dignified righteous sect actually did such a thing to their own disciple. Anyone would be disappointed and leave Ankwangsung just like that. Everyone glanced at the green-robed elder and couldn't help but reveal a trace of disdain. When Qing Nu, who was beside Feng Xiangtian, heard Yu Qianzhou's words, a few of his white beards were already broken. He cupped his hands at everyone and sighed, "I won't hide my shame. I also heard about this matter after the incident. It was indeed those evil disciples who were devoid of conscience and did the wrong thing first. Sigh. Let's not talk about the sect's misfortune. How shameful." These words undoubtedly proved that Yu Qianzhou's words were true, and everyone felt even more sympathy for Yu Qianzhou from the bottom of their hearts. Especially the Cultivation Pavilion's principal elder, O Sihai. He thought to himself, Ankwangsung didn't want such an outstanding disciple. Now that he has entered my Supporting Immortals Island, he is my Supporting Immortals Island's disciple. How dare you, Emir Ankwangsung, come to my Supporting Immortals Island to ask for him? This is outrageous. He had been thinking about how to get Yu Qianzhou into his cultivation pavilion. Brother Qing, don't blame yourself. Feng Xiangtian calmly comforted him. He faced Yu Qianzhou and said in a deep voice, "Where did you get the Supporting Immortals token from back then?" Yu Qianzhou still didn't answer him directly. Instead, he bowed to Guan Weiwu, causing everyone to frown. He was clearly not putting the sect master in his eyes. Feng Xiangtian was expressionless. The former bowed and said, "After leaving Ankwangsung, I wandered around. Once, I met an injured Qi refinement stage cultivator who was on the verge of death. Unfortunately, I couldn't save him no matter how hard I tried. Before he died, he said that he was originally a disciple expelled by Supporting Immortals Island. His name was Ji Wushuang. He gave me a token to repay my kindness and said that I could join Supporting Immortals Island with this token. I originally gave up on the idea of cultivating, but when I heard that it was the world's largest sect, I couldn't help but want to give it a try. In the end, I became a disciple of Supporting Immortals Island." Ji Wushuang? Feng Xiangtian frowned. He looked around and asked, "Is there a disciple called Ji Wushuang among the expelled disciples?" O Sihai suddenly sighed and said, "Sect Master, Yu Qianzhou is right. There was a disciple who was expelled from the sect called Ji Wushuang. He was a disciple of the Cultivation Pavilion. He was the grandson of the late Elder Ji. His father died in battle for Supporting Immortals Island. I didn't expect." Sigh. Elder Ji's grandson? 3 generations of his grandfather and grandson are all dead? Feng Xiangtian paused. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Their expressions were a bit sad. The disciples who were expelled from the sect didn't have a good ending. They didn't think that even the grandson of a dignified elder of the Cultivation Pavilion would end up like this. The elders who were able to hold the Immortal Supporting Medallion were all senior elders. Feng Xiangtian came back to his senses and shouted, "Why did you kill Sect Master Ankwangsung?" "I didn't kill him." Yu Qianzhou kept staring at Guan Weiwu, who felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." Feng Xiangtian snorted. At first, he wanted to protect Guan Weiwu. After all, talents were rare. However, Guan Weiwu had repeatedly looked down on him and even dared to deceive him. How could he put his face as the sect master? He was simply courting death. Feng Xiangtian shouted towards the outside, "Bring him in." 2 disciples pushed a person in. As soon as the person came in, he immediately knelt down and kowtowed to everyone. Trembling, he said, Great Immortals, Yu Qianzhou didn't even look at that person. He only stared at his master, Guan Weiwu. Feng Xiangtian pointed at Yu Qianzhou and shouted to that person, "Come forward. See if he is the person who released those flying swords that night." Yes. That person scrambled over. When he looked back, he immediately cried out in joy, "Eldest young master." Then, he nodded to Feng Xiangtian and said, "That night, it was my eldest young master who released those flying swords and fought with the evil person who destroyed my Yu clan." Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned. He looked down and saw that the person looked familiar, but he couldn't remember his name. He then looked at the clothes he was wearing. It was the uniform of the Yu residence's servants. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. What else could he say? Feng Xiangtian said with an expressionless face, Yu Qianqiu, what else do you have to say? Yu Qianqiu didn't answer. He looked at Guan Weiwu and said with a faint smile, Master. Could it be that you have nothing to say? When he said that, his heart turned cold. He said those words to Guan Weiwu because he wanted to tell Guan Weiwu about his difficulties and hoped that Master could understand. But as his master, Guan Weiwu actually didn't say a word for him. He didn't have any intention of protecting him. Could it be that the relationship between the two of them was so bad in the past? Since things had come to this, was there a need to stay on Fuxian Island? The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face gradually faded. He slowly closed his eyes. Seeing his disciple like this, a look of pain flashed across Guan Weiwu's face. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak for his disciple. In fact, after he knew about this matter, he immediately went to find his senior brother, hoping that his senior brother would show mercy. But the latter immediately scolded him, saying that this matter involved other sects, and whether it was fair or not was related to the reputation of Fuxian Island. He sternly warned him that as Yu Qianqiu's master, he shouldn't intervene in this matter. He knew how to deal with it. Ferdinand was also warned. Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes. His face was full of coldness. Suddenly, he knelt down in front of Guan Weiwu and kowtowed 3 times in a row. After standing up, he brushed the hem of his gown with one hand and pulled it with both hands. With a hiss sound, the front hem of the gown was torn off on the spot. He pinched it with one hand and slowly raised it towards everyone. Everyone was stunned. They didn't know what he meant. He raised the torn hem of the gown and shouted in a deep voice, Master, once this gown is torn, you and I are no longer friends. We don't owe each other anything. From now on, I, Yu Qianqiu, have nothing to do with Fuxian Island. From now on, I, Yu Qianqiu, am free to fly in the sky and fish in the sea. No one can control me, Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 214. How dare you? Oh, Sihai shouted. The good seedling that he coveted for a long time actually said such disgraceful words. He really didn't want to stay on supporting Xian Island anymore. Feng Xiangtian's face turned frighteningly gloomy. Since the establishment of supporting Xian Island, it had always been the sects that expelled their disciples. When had there ever been a case of a disciple abandoning the sect? Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand were already stunned. The group of elders was a little dumbfounded. The 2 disciples who had just escorted the person in looked at each other. Qing Nu was also a little stunned. This Yu Qianqiu was really courageous to publicly break off relations with the world's #1 sect, supporting Xian Island. In the entire cultivation world, how many people would dare to do such a thing? What a pity. Such a person would probably not be able to escape today. Yu Qianqiu, it's not too late to take back what you said just now. Otherwise, you will be in big trouble. Oh, Sihai warned sternly again. He really didn't want Yu Qianqiu to be destroyed just like this. In fact, he was already trying his best to protect Yu Qianqiu. Feng Xiangtian's face was gloomy. He raised his hand and pressed down on Sihai, signaling him to stop talking. However, he didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had already made up his mind. His initial respectful look was already gone. He straightened his back and shook his head indifferently. Spilled water can't be retrieved. The words that I, Yu Qianqiu, said are like spilled water. There's no way to take them back. Spilled water can't be retrieved. Feng Xiangtian looked around and sneered. I announce that from today onwards, Yu Qianqiu will be expelled from supporting Xian Island. His life or death has nothing to do with supporting Xian Island anymore. Foreign Affairs Palace immediately spread the news to the entire cultivation world. He turned around and said to Qing Nu beside him, Brother Qing, I'm sorry. From today onwards, the grudge between you, Ang Kuangsung, and Deluo sect has nothing to do with Fuxian Island. We won't interfere in this matter anymore. This meant that the supporting Immortal Island had completely abandoned Yu Qianqiu. From now on, Yu Qianqiu would have to bear all the troubles he caused by himself. The supporting Immortal Island would never stand up for him again. How could a core formation disciple survive against the Deluo sect and Anquansung? This was a disguised form of punishment. Ferdinand shook his head and sighed, while Guan Weiwu's face turned pale. This. Qing Nu also didn't come back to her senses for a while. How did things turn out like this in the blink of an eye? He had always guessed that Lu Changqing's death had something to do with supporting Immortal Island. Otherwise, where did those men in black come from? This matter had always troubled the upper echelons of Anquansung. They couldn't afford to offend them, but they had to deal with it. However, from what happened just now, if supporting Immortal Island wasn't deliberately putting on a show, then this matter really had nothing to do with supporting Immortal Island. Qing Nu thought about it again and again. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, is my Anquansung sect's treasure, the Green Destiny Sword, in your hands? If it's in your hands, you should return it to me. Humph. Return what? It was destroyed along with that broken horsetail whisk, Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, even if the two treasures weren't destroyed, do you think I would return them to you? The dignified sect leader Anquansung actually tried to kill my family members in the secular world. Moreover, they were the descendants of his savior. Only you people would do such a thing. Now, you still have the cheek to ask me for the Green Destiny Sword? Is there something wrong with your brain? Everyone was speechless. This Yu Qianqiu didn't even care about old ancestor Qing Nu, who was famous in the cultivation world. He was really arrogant. It seemed like it wasn't strange that he could continuously beat people up. What? The Green Destiny Sword was destroyed? Qing Nu's expression was a little twitching. She had seen the horsetail whisk that was destroyed, so she was afraid that he was telling the truth. Suppressing the anger in her heart, Qing Nu said in a deep voice, I, Anquansung, let you down first. Logically, I shouldn't pursue this matter. However, you killed my Anquansung sect leader. Whether you are willing or not, I will imprison you in Anquansung for 100 years. Also, who are those black-clothed people? You want to imprison me for 100 years? Dream on. Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. Qing Nu hadn't been humiliated like this for many years. She immediately had the intention to fight. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at her and smiled. Wait. If he had anything to ask or to fight, he would have to leave the supporting Immortal Island first. We aren't people of supporting Immortal Island. Fighting in their territory is not giving them face. All right. As you wish. Qing Nu was really angry. This kid was too arrogant. If she didn't teach him a lesson, she would be letting herself down. She immediately cupped her fists at Feng Xiangtian and said, Sect Leader Feng, please open the island's protective array and let us out. Feng Xiangtian nodded and flicked a white light out of the window. That white light flew into the sky. Old man, come out and reason with me. Yu Qianqiu shouted at Qing Nu. He jumped out of the window and did a somersault in the air. The sword on his back was unsheathed and drew a semicircle, carrying him into the sky. Sect Leader Feng, sorry to disturb you. Qing Nu cupped her fists and flew out of the window. However, with her cultivation at the end of the tribulation stage, she naturally didn't need to play such low-level tricks like sword kinesis. She turned into a shadow and chased after Yu Qianqiu, who had become a black dot in the sky. Let's go and take a look. After getting Feng Xiangtian's approval, several figures flew out of the window. Swoosh. Hearing the whistling sound coming from below, Yu Qianqiu looked down and was speechless. This tribulation stage expert is really an expert. Flying in the air is faster than me flying on my sword. When he looked back and saw a white cloud above him, he immediately raised his cultivation to the limit and flew into it. Want to run? Qing Nu, who was flying over, sneered in his heart when he saw the situation above him. His silhouette could still be seen, but as he smiled, he suddenly vanished into thin air. He had used teleportation, and when he reappeared, he was already at the edge of the white cloud high up in the sky. Yu Qianqiu had just managed to jump in before him. When Qing Nu saw him hiding inside, she did not chase after him. Instead, she flew directly to the top of the cloud. Looking around, this cloud was only 100 meters in radius. Immediately, she released a divine sense to scan the entire cloud. After a while, Qing Nu's face changed. Her divine sense went back and forth several times, but she didn't find the person inside. How could this be? With his cultivation, as long as his body moved slightly, it was impossible that her divine sense couldn't find him. At this time, O Sihai and Dongfang Chang Ao also quickly came to his side and floated together in the air. Seeing his bad expression, O Sihai said, "Senior Qing, what's wrong?" "That guy is gone," Qing Nu said with a strange expression. The people who came later looked at each other. How could this be? With Qing Nu's cultivation at the end of the tribulation stage, how could Yu Qianqiu escape? O Sihai was stunned and said, "Impossible." With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, how could he escape from Senior's hands? Even I don't think I can do it. No, I clearly saw him come in, and he should still be inside. How could I not find him? This guy is a little strange. After Qing Nu finished speaking, her divine sense swept back and forth again. O Sihai and the others also released their divine sense to check, but they still found nothing. I don't believe that this guy can escape under my eyes. You guys back off. After Qing Nu let them back a little, a long sword suddenly appeared in her hand. She raised it towards the sky and shouted, "Green sky sword art." The long sword in her hand emitted a green sword shadow that was nearly 100 meters long. It pierced the sky and suddenly radiated an imposing aura that spread out, causing the clothes of the people not far away to flutter. They exchanged glances. The old guy lost his face, got angry, and wanted to kill. The huge sword in Qing Nu's hand suddenly moved. It looked huge, but it was very dexterous in her hand. Who? The huge sword directly stirred the clouds. As her hand moved faster and faster, the whole white cloud was stirred up like a tornado, and gradually dissipated in the air. Until all the white clouds disappeared without a trace, Qing Nu put away the sword in her hand and threw it back into the storage bag. But in front of her, there was no one. Chapter 2:15. They looked around, but it was obvious that Yu Qianqiu had run away. A core formation realm disciple had escaped from a cultivator in the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. He had disappeared without a trace, and it was inexplicable. Qing Nu, who was floating in the air, had an ugly expression. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was her humiliation. Did Yu Qianqiu leave supporting Immortal Island just like that? O Sihai groaned in pain from the bottom of his heart. He was really optimistic about Yu Qianqiu's potential. Especially everything that had happened now, it made him sigh endlessly. At such a young age, Yu Qianqiu already had such means. However, everything was impossible now. Yu Qianqiu had really left. They flew to Qing Nu's side, and O Sihai asked superfluously, "Senior, did Yu Qianqiu run away?" Qing Nu looked around with a gloomy expression. There were only a few clouds in the blue sky, and below them was a vast sea. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, where could he run to? Could it be? He stared at supporting Immortal Island, which was shrouded in mist. O Sihai understood what he meant, and he said in astonishment, "Senior, do you suspect that he went back to supporting Immortal Island?" "That's impossible. When we just came out, the island's protective formation sealed supporting Immortal Island again. He can't go back." "Why don't Senior go back to supporting Immortal Island to look for him?" Qing Nu did have that thought, but even if Yu Qianqiu went back to hide, what right did he have to search supporting Immortal Island? He pondered for a moment, shook his head, and said, "There's no need. There's still a long way to go. I don't believe that this brat will never show himself in the cultivation world. Please bid farewell to sect leader Feng on my behalf. I won't go down anymore. With that said, he flew away without looking back, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. The few of them sent him off with their gazes before exchanging glances. All of them shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They then sized up the surroundings under the clear sky and bright sun. Such a bright and clear world was disturbed by Yu Qianqiu like this, and it seemed rather strange. Let's go back. Oh, Sihai sighed as the few of them dived towards Fuxian Island. After returning to Penglai Pavilion, Oh Sihai told Feng Xiangtian and others in detail what happened just now. Everyone was stunned and surprised. Qing Nu, who had the cultivation of the final phase of nature's test, didn't catch Yu Qianqiu and let him run away. Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand looked at each other and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In the main hall of the Wanfen Garden, Ma Jiugu, who was holding a walking stick, was standing in the middle of the hall with Lan Bingxiu as support. She was looking at Hibiscus, who was sitting motionlessly on a chair. Tears were silently rolling down Hibiscus's beautiful face. Obviously, she was restrained. Lan Bingxiu looked at the face that was even more beautiful than hers, and her expression was indescribable. After the banquet was over, Ferdinand angrily returned and greeted Ma Jiugu, Jiugu. There was quite a commotion above supporting Immortal Island just now. What? Could it be that Qing Nu, that old fellow, had made a move on Yu Qianqiu? What happened? Ma Jiugu turned around and asked. Hibiscus, who couldn't move, looked at her father anxiously. Yu Qianqiu. Hey! That brat was a bit impulsive. At first, the sect leader didn't plan to do anything to him. He just wanted to put on a show in front of Qing Nu. Who knew that when he saw that his master didn't say anything to help him, he actually cut ties with Guan Weiwu in front of everyone. Their master-disciple relationship ended there. The sect leader was also angry and expelled him from the supporting Immortal Island in public. It's funny that Qing Nu chased Yu Qianqiu to the outside of the supporting Immortal Island. In the end, with Qing Nu's cultivation of the final phase of nature's test, she couldn't catch Yu Qianqiu and let him escape. Ha! I really don't know how that brat has such ability. It's really incredible. Ferdinand shook his head and smiled bitterly. That old fellow, Qing Nu, didn't catch Yu Qianqiu? Ma Jiugu was stunned. Lan Bingxiu was also shocked. Hearing this, Hibiscus, who had tears in her eyes, immediately relaxed. Her large eyes flickered. Others might not know, but she knew that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. It was normal that others couldn't catch him. He escaped, but from now on, he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Without the protection of supporting Immortal Island, the Luo sect and Anquangsung will definitely not let him go. Sigh. Jiugu, why didn't you come forward to persuade the sect leader? I believe that if you had come forward, this matter wouldn't have escalated to this point, Ferdinand asked. I'm old and a little muddle-headed. I never interfere with the decisions of the supporting Immortal Island. Ma Jiugu turned around and stared at Hibiscus and asked, I heard that your girl's face was cured by Yu Qianqiu? Yes. Ferdinand nodded and said, this disciple will not hide it from you. Yu Qianqiu went to the demon domain and got a lot of spirit grasses. He secretly hid them and didn't hand them over. Instead, he secretly refined a furnace of Rui Dan for Rong-er. Just like that, Rong-er's face was cured. Rui pill? Even Ma Jiugu couldn't help but exclaim, is it the legendary Rui pill that can keep youthful, detoxify, nourish one's face, and make one immune to hundreds of poisons? According to Yu Qianqiu, it should be. You didn't see the appearance of the Rui pill at that time. Not only did it give off a pill halo, but it also emitted 7 colored rays of light. It was the first time in my life that I saw such a pill. It was an eye-opener. Ferdinand sighed. Hearing this, Lan Bingxiu looked at Hibiscus with an envious expression. Which woman didn't want to stay youthful? Your girl is so lucky. Sigh. If I had encountered such a pill in the past, I wouldn't have gotten the name Ma Jiugu. Last lawn, let's go. Let's not look at it, lest we get envious. Let's go. Let's go. Ma Jiugu shook her head and sighed. She slowly walked out with Lan Bingshue's help. When Yu Qianqiu was being chased by Qing Nu and was about to enter the cloud, he was scared out of his wits when he looked back. The other party actually teleported in front of him. As soon as he entered the cloud, he immediately flashed back to Utopia without saying anything. He didn't dare to be long-winded. A cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage was simply too terrifying for him. The reason why he disappeared into the cloud was that he didn't want to expose the secret that he could disappear into thin air. Who knew that he would almost be killed? After appearing in Bai Suzhen's room in the Misty Palace, he finally felt safe. He breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Bai Suzhen suddenly looked back. Seeing him like this, she walked up to him and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" "Damn it. I'm so unlucky today. I was just expelled from the supporting Immortals Island, and now I'm being chased by a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage by Anquansung. Just a little bit more. If he had killed me before I could react, I might not have been able to come back. I was so scared." Yu Qianqiu said in a relaxed manner after the fright. "You were expelled from the supporting Immortals Island? Why would a cultivator from Anquansung want to kill you? Is it because you helped me investigate the 4 treasures?" Bai Suzhen grabbed his arm. Especially when she saw the long hem of his robe. He was naked behind his buttocks and his legs were exposed in front. Who knew what kind of danger he had encountered? Yu Qianqiu gently pressed her hand and said with a smile, "Sister, don't think too much. It's not your fault. It's my fault." Bai Suzhen, on the other hand, didn't think so. She only thought that he was comforting her. She bit her lips and said, "I can take my time with my matters. You must pay attention to your safety outside." In her heart, there was nothing more important than Yu Qianqiu's safety. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly, "I'm afraid it's too late now. I believe it won't take long for the whole cultivation world to know that I was expelled from the supporting Immortals Island. At that time, I'm afraid that the Daluo sect and Anquansung will cast their net to find me. It's not convenient for me to show myself in public for a while. Then you shouldn't go out during this period of time." Bai Suzhen's peerless features gently lifted as she looked at him worriedly. Yu Qianqiu was a little dazed. He had the urge to hug and kiss her. Just when he was thinking about it, his divine sense suddenly fluctuated. Someone was looking for him. Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "It's news from the Pillar of General's office. Could it be that there's an improvement in the mission that I gave to little Tian?" "Sister, I have something to do. I'll go out for a while." As soon as he finished speaking, he took off his long robe and put it on. Then, he disappeared without a trace. Bai Suzhen bent down to pick up the torn clothes on the ground and held them in her hands. Her pretty face was filled with worry. Chapter 216. The rear garden of the National Pillar's mansion had become a forbidden area. Actually, there was nothing they could do about it. At this time, there were many people in the rear garden. There were adults and children, and all of them were dressed shabbily. None of them were presentable, and they all looked at the surrounding courtyard with fear. No one dared to make a sound, and there were probably more than 100 people. These people were brought here by Ling Feng and the others while they were cultivating in the capital. Nowadays, the 3 of them could be said to be living a comfortable life. They cultivated in peace, and with the nourishment of spirit stones and spirit pills, their cultivation was rising rapidly. In the past, it was something they didn't even dare to think about. They didn't have to worry about food and drink, and there was no one to restrict them. They also had the money Shi Xiaotian gave them to spend. Although they couldn't normally appear in the general's mansion, they would climb over the wall and stroll around the capital when they were free. The 3 of them did not dare to neglect the task that Yu Qianqiu had entrusted them with. The purpose of their stroll was to find people with spirit roots for cultivation. Shi Xiaotian looked at the group of people in the rear garden and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of people did Ling Feng and the others bring here? Most of them looked like beggars, or they looked like they were in dire straits. Some of them had eaten their fill and were squatting in the shade of a tree, scratching lice. On the wall of the small courtyard, Ling Feng and the others sat side by side, while Shi Xiaotian stood on it. The four of them looked at the group of people in the garden. Shi Xiaotian smiled bitterly and said, Ling Feng, did you bring all the beggars in the capital here? Bei Zi looked up at him and smiled. If the three of us really brought all the beggars in the capital here, even 10 of your generals' mansions wouldn't be able to accommodate them, let alone this garden. We also want to bring some decent people for boss, but boss already told us to keep a low profile. If we brought so many ordinary people here, I'm afraid that the government would have long been alerted and people would have noticed. Look at these beggars and vagrants, they don't have families, and they're all alone. Without them, no one in the capital would know. Shi Xiaotian waved his finger and said, but look, why did you bring even old men here? What does boss want them for? That's good. At least they won't starve to death on the streets. It was rare for Xian Ping to say such a long sentence. Ling Feng nodded and said, boss said that as long as they don't belong to any sect and have spiritual roots, regardless of age, the more the better. Sigh. Let's wait for the boss to get here first. Shi Xiaotian shook his head and raised a small silver ball in his hand. He asked doubtfully, I just used my divine sense to check inside and found that it's empty. Can this really summon boss? It should be possible. Otherwise, boss wouldn't have given this to us for no reason. Ling Feng said. Shi Xiaotian looked at the silver ball in his hand and smiled bitterly. I hope boss can take them away as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be hundreds of people eating every day. What? Your Grand General's residence can't even support 100 people? Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared on top of the wall and laughed. Boss. The few of them turned around and exclaimed in surprise. After Shi Xiaotian's joy, he smiled awkwardly and said, Boss, that's not what I meant. It's just that my father is about to return to the imperial court. I'm afraid it will arouse my father's suspicion. I don't know how to explain it to him. Yu Qianqiu looked at the hundreds of people and nodded slightly. They were all people with spiritual roots. He didn't expect Ling Feng and the other two to be able to gather so many people in such a short period of time. However, he was stunned when he saw a few old people among them. Let's talk inside. Yu Qianqiu directly entered the courtyard from the top of the wall. After the four of them entered the main hall, Yu Qianqiu sat on a chair in the main hall and asked curiously, the pillar of the State General has been fighting at the borders for many years. Why is he suddenly returning to the imperial court? Shi Xiaotian smiled and said, it's nothing. The Pingwa General has two beautiful daughters. The eldest is going to marry the current crown prince, and the second is going to marry the eldest son of the Weigua General. My father, the Pingwa General, and the Weigua General are the three great generals of the empire. Maybe it's because of this that my father has to come personally to congratulate them. An important official with an important official, and an important official with the crown prince? Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched. He seemed to feel that something wasn't right. He frowned and said, Xiaotian, among the three great generals of the empire, who has the greatest military power? It's not a matter of who has the greatest military power. The three great generals control 6 million soldiers and horses, and there isn't much of a difference in power. If we're talking about military power, I'm afraid it's still my father. Shi Xiaotian said with a hint of pride. Why? Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian raised his hand and gestured. The south of the Hua Xia Empire is a barren land that is rarely visited by humans. In the words of our cultivation world, it's called the demonic domain. The east side, Linhai, has always been guarded by the troops of the Weigua General. The Pingwa General's troops are mainly guarding the capital region, as well as the northern border. My father, the pillar of the State General, is guarding the west. The east side, Linhai, has no neighbors. The south is barren, and although it's dangerous, there are no wars. Although there's a big country in the north, they're located in a bitter cold land. In terms of strength, they can't compare to our empire. Only the west that my father guards is not only vast, but it's also connected to the 6 countries. Ever since our empire was founded, the 6 countries have never stopped having conflicts, big or small. Think about it, boss. For so many years, the troops in the east, south, and north have been preparing for war all year round. On the other hand, the west that my father guards is always preparing for war. Therefore, among the 3 great generals of the empire, my father's troops are the strongest. Oh. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu had always been in the cultivation world, so he really didn't know much about these things. After a moment of silence, he asked again, then what about the defense of the West when your father returns to the capital? Isn't he worried at all? Haha. Boss, you don't know. Shi Xiaotian laughed. Last year, the 6 countries attacked our empire together, instantly angering my father. My father immediately issued a death order. With a single command, his 2 million troops split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries one by one, causing them to suffer great losses. In the end, the 6 countries sued for peace. At the beginning of this year, they signed an inviolable treaty with our Huaxia Empire. That's why my father can return to the capital with peace of mind. As for the defense of the West, my father has already handed it over to my second brother. Second brother has grown up under my father's guidance. I believe that it won't be a problem for him to guard the West. Oh. That means that there's no war in the West for now? Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian laughed. The 6 countries have suffered great losses. Even if they want to cause trouble, it'll be impossible for them to do so in the next decade or so. Seeing the proud look on Shi Xiaotian's face, Yu Qianqiu didn't ask him anything else. However, in his heart, he was grumbling. There was no war at the border, but the Shi family controlled the strongest troops of the Huaxia Empire. A single army was able to defeat the armies of the 6 countries at the same time. One could imagine the battle prowess of this army. Some people probably couldn't sit still anymore. Look, they even brought up the matter of an alliance marriage. Chapter 217. Ling Feng walked over and said, Boss, I, Baizi, and Xian Ping found the people in the garden. Although they don't have much aptitude, they still have some spiritual roots. I wonder if they can be used. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. It's fine as long as they have spiritual roots. How can there be so many people with good aptitude? Those with good aptitude have already been taken away by the major sections. You guys won't even have the chance to find them. But why did you bring the old man here? Shi Xiaotian glanced at the 3 of them and laughed in his heart. Ling Feng was startled and said, Boss, didn't you say it's better to have more people regardless of age? Did I say that? Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately came to a realization, oh. I think I did say that before. Forget it, it's better than nothing. We can bring them back to cultivate and they'll be stronger than ordinary people. With so many people, we'll be worried about our food supply. It's better to bring them back and not do anything else. We can be self-sufficient. By the way, little Tian, when you have time, help me gather some grains and seeds of all kinds of fruits and vegetables. I have great use for them. The 3 of them didn't know what he was going to do. Shi Xiaotian nodded and agreed. Yu Qianqiu instructed again, Ling Feng, Baizi, and Xian Ping, continue to search for people with spiritual roots. I'll still say it. I'll take as many as you can regardless of age. It doesn't matter if your aptitude is lacking, I have a way to solve it. But remember, keep a low profile and don't let the other sects find out. I've been chased out of supporting Immortal's island. Many people want to kill me. This general's residence is my stronghold now. Don't let it be exposed. The 3 of them looked at each other and Shi Xiaotian asked in surprise, why were you chased out of supporting Immortal's island? My ass. Yu Qianqiu stood up and patted Shi Xiaotian's shoulder. He smiled and said, Xiao Tian, I've taken revenge for you in Anquangsung. The head of Anquangsung, Lu Chongqing, and his grandson, Lu Jingguang, were both killed by me. Ah. They were shocked again. Sure, Xiao Tian swallowed his saliva and said, Boss, you're not lying to me, right? You killed Sect Master Anquangsung? How is this possible? Damn it. Do I look like a liar to you? Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, AI. If I didn't kill him, would I have been expelled from the supporting Immortal Island? Sigh. The days of having someone to back him up were over. From now on, he would have to rely on himself. Everyone, keep a low profile. They were completely speechless, but they still didn't quite believe it. How could the Righteous Path's 6th-ranked sect leader Anquangsung be killed so easily? It's good to be expelled from the sect. In the future, I can come here whenever I want. Oh right, Xiao Tian, get me a set of ordinary clothes. I can't wear the supporting Immortal Island's clothes anymore. I'll definitely get into trouble if I stroll around the capital. Yu Qianzhou said. Sure, Xiao Tian's eyes lit up. From Yu Qianzhou's words, he could tell that Yu Qianzhou was going to be here often. He immediately agreed happily and went out to find clothes for Yu Qianzhou. Ling Feng and the other two were also overjoyed. As for Yu Qianzhou, he flashed into the garden and stored the 100 or so people in the garden into utopia. After giving some instructions to Guan Yu, Shi Xiao Tian ran over excitedly with a set of clothes. He said, Boss, try this set of clothes to see if it suits you. This is my second brother's clothes. His figure seems to be about the same as yours. Yu Qianzhou took a look and saw that the embroidered clothes, jade belt, and thick-soled boots were all prepared. He threw them back and snappily said, I just told you to keep a low profile. Why did you give me these clothes? Are you afraid that others won't notice me? He waved his hand and said, Just give me the clothes of your general residence's servants. Servants' clothes are for you to wear? Sure, Xiao Tian was stunned. Ling Feng and the other two felt a little uncomfortable looking at the silk robes they were wearing. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, Why are you so long-winded? If I say it's fine, it's fine. Left with no choice, Shi Xiao Tian could only run back to get him a set of servants' clothes. When Yu Qianzhou put on a slanted hat and adjusted his brand new black clothes, he instantly revealed a satisfied smile and said, Not bad, not bad. These clothes are really low profile. Xiao Tian, from today onwards, I'll be your follower. I don't dare, I don't dare. Sure, Xiao Tian hurriedly waved his hand. He thought, if you become my follower, what if one day you're not happy? Where am I going to find spirit stones and spirit pills? Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, Don't be long-winded. In front of others, I'll be your follower. Behind others, I'll still be your boss. That's settled. Ling Feng and the other two exchanged glances and said, Xiao Tian, find us a set of servants' clothes too. Why? Is it fun to be a servant's follower? Yu Qianzhou glared at them and said, Do you want to go to the capital's 10,000 flower house to be a pimp? The three looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. After staying in the capital for so long, the three naturally knew what kind of place 10,000 flower house was. Xiao Tian. Speaking of 10,000 flower house, I've never been there before. Why don't you take me there now? Yu Qianzhou tidied up the crooked hat on his head and sighed. At this time, he had already put away the storage bag and the sword on his back. To him, it didn't matter if these things were on display or not. If he wanted to take them out, it would only take a thought. The three looked at each other and didn't know if he was telling the truth or not. Looking at his serious expression, it didn't seem like he was joking. Sure, Xiao Tian asked tentatively, Boss, you really want to go to 10,000 flower house? Heh. That place is a lively place. Oh. Lively? Yu Qianzhou nodded his head seriously and said, I was just saying it casually. Since you want to go, as your follower, I naturally have to accompany you. AI. If you want to go, then hurry up. Let's go. Let's go. Don't waste time. The three were completely speechless. Yu Qianzhou pushed Shi Xiaotian out in a hurry. As he walked, he didn't forget to look back and warn the three who followed him, "What are you three doing here? Go do what you need to do." Pillar of State General's residence. Yu Qianzhou had lived here for more than a year, so he was very familiar with the place. In the wealthy and powerful mansion, the two of them walked out of the back garden one after another. The servants who passed by saluted when they saw Shi Xiaotian, but when they saw the servant in new clothes behind him, they all felt that he was very unfamiliar. They all secretly muttered, "Why haven't I seen the third young master's servant before?" Shi Xiaotian walked confidently in front, while Yu Qianzhou followed behind with his hands behind his back. His aura wasn't any weaker than the former's, but it seemed that his awareness as a servant was a little lacking. When the two of them were about to pass the main hall, a beautiful woman walked out. The two women on her left and right were also quite good-looking. Behind them was a group of servant girls. Shi Xiaotian slowed down and said in a low voice, "You know my mother. The two beside her are my eldest sister-in-law and second sister-in-law. They married a few years ago, so you haven't seen them before." The two of them inevitably bumped into each other. Shi Xiaotian bowed and said, "Mother. Eldest sister-in-law, second sister-in-law." The servants on the other side also bowed to Shi Xiaotian. Li Hongyang looked at her son lovingly. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the servant behind her son and was slightly startled. Not only did this servant not bow to her, he actually stood there with his hands behind his back. Yu Qianzhou looked at her and nodded with a smile. When Li Hongyang saw who it was, she was immediately shocked. When the woman beside her saw Yu Qianzhou, she frowned and said, "Uncle, is this the new retainer? Why isn't he bowing to mother?" She immediately turned around and shouted, "Housekeeper, who brought this servant? Why doesn't he know the most basic manners of servants? Someone come. Bring him to teach him the rules." Chapter 218. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. Not only him, Li Hongyang and Shi Xiaotian were also dumbfounded. Not far away, a man in his 50s jogged over and repeatedly smiled apologetically at the woman. He shouted at Yu Qianzhou in a low voice, "Still not coming with me, eh? Mr. Yu." The housekeeper was Shi Shunqing, a retainer of the general's office. He had met Yu Qianzhou many times in the past, so he was familiar with him. He more or less knew what kind of person Yu Qianzhou was. When he saw Yu Qianzhou's face clearly, he was dumbfounded. Close to 10 years had passed, and his own appearance had already aged. However, Yu Qianzhou still looked the same, just that his appearance had become more mature. He naturally recognized him with a single glance, and was immediately at a loss as to what to do. "Shunqing, this has nothing to do with you. Take all the servants away. I haven't seen my wife for many years, so we have something to talk about." Yu Qianzhou came back to his senses and smiled. He ordered the housekeeper to leave. Shi Shunqing nodded repeatedly. After getting Li Hongyang's permission, he took the group of servants away. Seeing that the housekeeper didn't listen to her, the woman was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said, "Does the general's office have any rules? Wanshi, don't be rude." Li Hongyang stopped her. The other woman next to her quietly watched everything that happened just now. The servant in front of her was obviously not simple. How could a normal person order the housekeeper of the general's office? "Mother, these servants are getting more and more unruly. If you don't teach them a lesson, they will bully their master in the future. Mother is kind, so you can't be cruel. Why don't you let your wife discipline them instead?" The woman seemed to have lost a nerve in her head and was still chattering. The other woman had already pulled her a few times, but she still didn't notice. "Shut up." Li Hongyang also scolded her wife. In her impression, Yu Qianzhou was like a god. Back then, he just casually drew a path and trapped her eldest son for a few days. How could she offend him? Damn it. If you continue to nag, I'll sell you to Africa. Yu Qianqiu was speechless when he met such a woman. He pointed at the woman's pretty face and asked Shi Xiaotian, is this your sister-in-law? Is it Shi Youtian's wife or Shi Yintian's? Shi Xiaotian looked at him with a wry smile and thought to himself, if you don't wear this servant's clothes, how could you have caused such trouble? Li Hongniang took over the conversation and introduced awkwardly, Mister, please don't be offended. This is Bao Wanshi, the wife of my eldest son, Yu Tian, and this is Situ Hui, the wife of my second son, Yin Tian. Bao Wanshi? Yu Qianqiu sized her up and laughed coldly. She doesn't live up to her name. Why did Yu Tian choose such a shrew? In my opinion, he should just divorce her. His words were not polite at all. The people at the side were speechless. Shi Xiaotian really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bao Wanshi was so angry that her face turned pale. She said with a trembling voice, You. Wah. She was so angry that she cried. Yu Qianqiu didn't have a good impression of shrewd-like women. What he said just now was to anger her. Seeing that she was crying, he immediately became interested in watching a good show. He jokingly said, Cry, continue to cry. It's too soft, louder. Bao Wanshi did as he said and began to cry loudly. Her voice was really sharp, and she even made a lot of body movements. Situ Hui, who was at the side, tried to comfort her, but it was useless. Li Hongniang felt a headache coming on. Shi Xiaotian quickly pulled Yu Qianqiu back and said, Boss, I'm begging you. Please be lenient with your words. She is my sister-in-law after all. Just give me some face, okay? Who made my wife cry? A voice that pretended to be angry was heard with a hint of laughter. Yu Qianqiu turned to look. A person walked out from the entrance. He wore a scholar's hat and a vermilion official's robe. Who else could it be but the Shi family's boss, Shi Youtian? However, he seemed much more mature than before, especially with the two small tufts of beard on his mouth. Wah! Bao Wanshi acted as if she saw her savior. She wiped her tears and rushed into Shi Youtian's arms. She began to complain about all her grievances. Humph! There's such an evil servant. Wanshi, don't cry. I'll teach him a lesson for you. Shi Youtian let go of his wife and walked over with large strides. Haha. Interesting. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. He said, Shi Youtian, we haven't seen each other for so many years. I didn't think you'd become a flower protector. I'd like to see how you'll teach me a lesson. How dare you? After Shi Youtian saw the person's face clearly, the words he was about to shout got stuck in his throat. His face turned red. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly lifted the hem of his official robe and ran over to pay his respects. Yu Tian greets Mr. I haven't seen Mr. for many years. You've been well. No matter what their relationship was like in the past, meeting old friends was always a happy thing. Yu Qianqiu supported him and said with a smile, I don't live as well as you do. Hugging your wife and flirting in public. TSK. What a simple life. Mister, you must be joking. Yu Tian only covets some romantic relationships. How can it compare to Mr. Celestial life? After all these years, Mr. is still as elegant as ever. Yu Tian really envies you. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Back then, he painstakingly pursued the path of cultivation. In the end, the path was ethereal and he woke up from his dream. He finally gave up and settled down to marry a wife and focus on his career. However, he couldn't help but have a cultivation complex in his heart. He sighed to himself. His third wife was the one he was envious of. He often wanted to chat with his third wife, but it was difficult to see her leave the forbidden area of the back garden. At this moment, Bao Wanshi was no longer crying. She was looking at her husband with her mouth wide open. No matter how stupid she was, she could sense that the servant in front of her was not ordinary. Shi Youtian waved at her and said, Wanshi, come and greet Mr. Ah. Bao Wancher didn't know where to put her hands. She walked over gracefully and saluted with a flushed face. Bao Wancher greets Mr. I was reckless and offended Mr. just now. Please forgive me, Mr. Si Tuhui, who was at the side, was very obedient. She didn't need to be reminded and came over to bow. Si Tuhui greets Mr. Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly at Bao Wancher and ignored her. Instead, he raised his hand at Si Tuhui, indicating that she didn't have to be so polite. He smiled and said, Are you Yin Tian's wife? I'm old acquaintances with your husband. Wife? Husband? This mister's words were a little rude. Si Tuhui muttered to herself, but she nodded with a smile and retreated to the side. Sure, Yu Tian saw that Yu Qianqiu was ignoring his wife's apology. He immediately gave his third brother a look, asking him to plead for leniency. Sure Xiao Tian understood and walked over to pull Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, Boss, my sister-in-law actually has a good heart. She's just a little outspoken. Don't bother with her. That's right, that's right. Sure Yu Tian walked over and said, Yu Tian apologizes to Mr. on my wife's behalf. I hope that Mr. will forgive my wife this time for my third brother's sake. Actually, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't really bother with an ordinary person like her. However, women sometimes relied on their status and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In order to be less long-winded in the future, he couldn't help but scare her a little. He immediately pointed his finger and shouted, Bao Wancher, I'll spare your life this time for the sake of the Shi brothers. If you dare to do this again, I'll definitely take your head. When that time comes, it'll be useless no matter who pleads for mercy. Hurry up and thank Mr. Sure Yu Tian tugged at his wife. Bao Wancher felt very wronged. How could she be treated worse than an outsider in her own home? However, she still thanked him honestly. This matter was settled just like that. Bless the heavens. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and sighed, Xiao Tian and I are going to Wanhua brothel. Do you want to join us? Sure Xiao Tian almost vomited blood. He looked at his mother, who was glaring at him, guiltily. Si Tuhui's face was already red. Bao Wancher's eyes were wide open. Sure Yu Tian kept smiling foolishly at Yu Qianqiu. This question was very difficult to answer. In fact, he really wanted to go out with Yu Qianqiu. It was not for the fans of Wanhua brothel, but purely for Yu Qianqiu. However, his wife, mother, and sister-in-law were all at the side. How was he supposed to answer? Yu Qianqiu joked, Are you going or not? Why are you smiling foolishly? Give me an answer. Sure Xiaotian's expression twitched. Boss, you just want to see the world in chaos. You're not allowed to go. Bao Wancher opened her arms and stood in front of Sure Yu Tian. She glared at Yu Qianqiu and said, Even if you kill me, I won't let him go to that place with you. Oh. I didn't know that she was a feminist. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, Yu Tian, since your wife doesn't want you to go, then forget it. Xiao Tian, let's go. With that said, he walked straight out. Sure Xiao Tian lowered his head and followed behind as if he was looking for ants. Hey. Mister, wait. Sure Yu Tian was a little anxious. If you dare to go, I'll fight it out with you. Bao Wancher jumped onto Sure Yu Tian and hugged him tightly. She didn't care about her image anymore. Not far away, Yu Qianqiu's laughter could be heard. Si Tuhui's eyes revealed a trace of curiosity. Who was this person? Chapter 219. The speed at which news spread in the cultivation world was very fast. It was much faster than the speed at which a horse could run or a pigeon could carry a message. Once the news of Yu Qianqiu being expelled from the supporting Immortals Island was released, it caused a huge uproar. Of course, an ordinary core formation disciple would not be able to cause such a huge uproar. The main reason was that the things he did had a huge impact. 100 Flowers Valley beat up the grandson of sect master Ang Kuangsung, and Hat Island beat up the son of Deluo Sec's sect master. This guy seemed to be targeting those with status. Ong Kwangsung announced that sect master Ong Kwangsung and his grandson had been killed by Yu Qianqiu. Ong Kwangsung offered a reward of 1 million high-grade spirit stones to anyone who could provide information about Yu Qianqiu. The reward for taking Yu Qianqiu's head was 5 million high-grade spirit stones, and the reward for capturing Yu Qianqiu alive was 10 million high-grade spirit stones. As soon as the news of the Azure Light sect was released, the entire cultivation world was boiling. A mere core formation disciple killed sect master Ong Kwangsung? It was hard to believe. However, for those from the small sects, 1 million, 5 million, or even 10 million upper spiritual stones were tempting enough for them. Now that Yu Qianqiu didn't have the support of supporting Immortal Island, he was just a core formation cultivator. He was no different from a lowly vagrant cultivator. There was nothing to be afraid of. Therefore, they sent out their disciples to investigate. Even if they did not expect to earn 10 million high-grade spirit stones, it would still be good if they could earn 1 million. Those poor rogue cultivators tried their luck everywhere. However, there was a rumor that Ong Kwangsung's ancestor Qing Nu failed to capture Yu Qianqiu when he confronted Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he allowed Yu Qianqiu to escape unscathed. However, after thinking about it, everyone understood that this was pure nonsense. How could a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator fail to capture a core formation cultivator? It was a joke and a rumor. Under Ong Kwangsung's request, the entire cultivation alliance began to operate. All the righteous sects that joined the cultivation alliance would search for Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world. If necessary, they could kill him on the spot. Deluo sect was especially supportive of this. At this moment, in the Wu clan's ancestral hall of the 4 major clans, the clan heads of the 4 major clans gathered together at the fastest speed. After receiving the news from Wu Sihai, the 4 clan heads weren't surprised that Yu Qianqiu was expelled from Fuxian Island. After the 4 clan heads had a discussion, they issued a secret order to the disciples of the 4 major clans to search for Yu Qianqiu in secret. Once they found him, they were to protect him at all costs until he returned to the 4 major clans. Once this news was out, the evil Dao was the happiest. The righteous sects actually had such an unconventional traitor. Moreover, he was a traitor of Fuxian Island. Moreover, he was such a famous traitor. If he could join the evil Dao, it would be a huge blow to the reputation of the righteous sections. Why wouldn't they do it? As a result, the entire evil Dao alliance began to operate rapidly. All the evil Dao sects had a common understanding that they would protect Yu Qianqiu at all costs when necessary. If any of the sects suffered any losses because of this matter, all the sects would compensate them together. In short, they must not let the righteous sects succeed. 10,000 demons Qiu Wuyuan clamored in high spirits as he personally commanded this leap operation. In an instant, both the righteous and the evil Dao took action. Yu Qianqiu had completely disrupted the entire cultivation world. No one knew if the righteous sects would succeed or if the evil Dao would be rampant. In the bustling streets of the Huaxia Empire, Yu Qianqiu was wearing black clothes and a small hat. He was dressed like a servant and was completely unaware of everything that happened in the cultivation world because of him. He was leisurely strolling behind Shi Shaotian. When he saw the people and carriages passing by and people looking at him with strange eyes, Yu Qianqiu immediately restrained himself. Not to mention anything else, the fact that he was misunderstood by Bao Wancher at the general's mansion meant that he was not good enough at acting as a servant. Thus, he found a passerby as a comparison. He put down his hands behind his back and straightened his chest. He followed behind Shi Shaotian with a dejected look. "Boss." Shi Shaotian turned around and was stunned. Why did his boss look like a thief? He said in a daze, "Are we really going to Wanhualu? F***CK. Have you ever seen a young master call a servant boss? Please act more properly and call me Little Qian." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Little Qian, are we really going to Wanhualu? Shi Shaotian said a little unnaturally. "Young master, if you say so, we will go." Yu Qianqiu put on a servant's smile and thought, Wanhua Lu is so famous in the capital. I wonder what the difference is between the brothels of the ancient times and the ones in my previous life. I wasn't in the mood before, but now that I'm interested, I'll be letting myself down if I don't take a look. When did I say I wanted to go? It seems like you're the one who said you wanted to go. Shi Xiaotian was speechless. He originally wanted to get a carriage, but he didn't know why Yu Qianqiu rejected it and insisted on walking. Wanhua Lu should be considered as the #1 brothel in the Huaxia Empire. There were branches in all the bigger cities in the empire. To be able to obtain the title of Wanhua and make so many men flock to it like ducks and spend money like water, it definitely had its own unique points. Yu Qianqiu came because of this point. This was the #1 brothel in the world. Compared to the #1 brothel in the world, Fu Xian Island, it seemed like more people knew about the former than the latter. The night was about to turn dark. On a small street that wasn't the main street, the moment one entered the street, one could smell the fragrance of pink powder. This small street was abnormally bustling with people walking to and fro, rubbing shoulders with each other. It was a street where one could eat, drink, and be merry. This was all thanks to the #1 brothel in the world, Wanhua Lu. When the two walked in, Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in admiration that this was a first-rate place to spend money. Shi Xiaotian's face also became lively. Suddenly, there was a crowd of people rushing towards the largest building in the middle of the street. That building was decorated with colorful makeup, and it was even more beautiful than a bride's. The fragrance of pink powder was coming from that building. Needless to say, this was definitely Wanhua Lu. The two of them were swept by the crowd. Shi Xiaotian turned his head and looked at the crowded carriages on the street. He was secretly glad that he didn't take a carriage. Yu Qianqiu patted the shoulder of a person beside him and asked, "Brother, why is it so lively here? Is Wanhua Lu like this every day?" That person was trying his best to squeeze forward. Hearing this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise and said, "One look and I know it's your first time here. Today is the day that the #1 courtesan of Wanhua Lu will appear. Normally, you won't be able to see it. It only happens once a month. If you're lucky, you might be able to see it." After saying this, he ignored him and continued to squeeze forward. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan? How beautiful would she be? Yu Qianqiu was instantly interested. He secretly circulated his true essence, trying to push through the crowd. At this moment, a shout came from the street, "All of you, get out of my way." The crowd turned around and saw an officer riding a large horse leading a large group of soldiers. They began to part the crowd and cut in. The commoners didn't dare to block their way, and the crowd began to squeeze to the sides again. The entrance of the 10,000 flower house was immediately surrounded by a group of soldiers wielding shining long sabers. Although there were soldiers guarding the entrance, the carriages on the street still couldn't enter. Hence, there were more soldiers protecting a group of people who got off the carriages and walked towards Wanhua Lu. Looking at the clothes of these people, they were probably nobles. Seeing these people easily pass through the crowd with their heads held high, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to throw a few bricks at them, but after thinking about it, he held back. The two of them squeezed into the crowd and waited for more than 2 hours. After the soldiers had probably escorted hundreds of nobles in, they finally retreated and guarded the entrance of Wanhua Lu, not letting random people in. Then, a few rich people who were escorted by their servants were allowed in after negotiating with the tortoise bus at the entrance. As for the people squeezing on the street, they were basically commoners or people who weren't rich or powerful, so they were naturally prevented from entering. They could only watch from the outside. Damn it. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan. This daddy here hangs out with the third young master of the National Pillar General's estate, who holds great military power, but I can't even enter a brothel. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He glared at Shi Xiaotian, who was shaking his head and smiling bitterly. He was very unhappy. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. He raised his hand and shouted, "The third young master of the National Pillar General's estate has arrived." Chapter 220. His voice was loud and clear. The moment the name, Pillar of the State General, was announced, it immediately produced a miraculous effect. The clamoring crowd immediately quietened down. Shwa! Everyone turned their heads to look in one direction. Becoming the center of attention, Shi Xiaotian was momentarily stunned. He never expected Yu Qianzhou to make such a move. At the entrance of the 1,000-flower brothel, the military officer holding the saber by his waist looked over in shock. Yu Qianzhou, who was dressed as a house servant, was naturally unable to attract his attention. Seeing Shi Xiaotian in his luxurious robes, he was a little shocked. As the third young master of the Pillar of the State General's residence, although Shi Xiaotian rarely appeared in public, he had still seen him on a few occasions. As a soldier, the Pillar of the State General who had been fighting at the western borders for many years was undoubtedly the idol of the entire Huaxia Empire. He also had a very high prestige among the citizens of the empire. Especially last year, when the general's 2 million soldiers split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries, forcing the 6 countries to sign an armistice, it pushed the reputation of the Pillar of the State General to the peak. In their hearts, the Pillar of the State General was the guardian of the Huaxia Empire. Out of the way! The military officers shouted excitedly. The citizens also had a look of surprise on their faces as they squeezed to the side, afraid to block Shi Xiaotian's path. The military officer waved his hand, and the soldiers guarding the 1,000-flower brothel immediately split into 2 groups, rushing into the path that the citizens had vacated. They lined up neatly on both sides of the path. The military officer strode towards Shi Xiaotian and waved his hand to open his cloak. Holding the saber in his hand, he knelt down on one knee and said in a clear voice, "This general is the City Guard Patrol Commander Yuan Fei. Greetings, third young master." "Greetings, third young master." The 2 rows of guards and the guards of the 1,000-flower brothel all knelt down in unison. It was unknown which citizen knelt down first, but the citizens of the entire street all knelt down with difficulty. Because it was simply too crowded, they all shouted, "This humble citizen greets third young master. This humble citizen greets third young master." Their shouts rang out one after another, and it was clear that they were all heartfelt respect. Shi Xiaotian was a little embarrassed. Coming to a brothel in the name of the National Pillar General's residence was not something to be proud of. Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the Pillar of the State General to have such high prestige among the soldiers and citizens. He couldn't help but feel regret for his actions earlier. To have caused the citizens to love the Pillar of the State General in such a manner. His conscience really couldn't be justified. After all, he was a soldier in his previous life. To be able to command such respect from the citizens, it was impossible to do so without experiencing 1,000 miles of bloodshed. Yu Qianzhou was truly ashamed to have tarnished the reputation of a general like this. The nobles and the rich who had entered the 10,000-flower house were also shocked by the continuous shouts outside. Third young master? Which family's third young master had come to cause such a big commotion? They sent their servants to the door to inquire. All the soldiers and civilians on the street knelt down. Only the 2 young men dressed as a master and a servant stood out, making the servants speechless. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but roll his eyes at Yu Qianzhou with a little complaint. The latter smiled awkwardly. Shi Xiaotian circulated his true yuan and said loudly, "My fellow citizens, please get up. I, Shi Xiaotian, am not worthy of such a big greeting." His voice surged through the entire street, drowning out everyone's greetings. The soldiers and commoners were shocked. What a loud voice! As expected of the son of the National Pillar General. Like father, like son. Everyone thanked him and said, "Thank you, third young master." They got up with difficulty. "Commander Yuan, please get up." Shi Xiaotian reached out to help Yuan Fei up. When the latter heard the former's loud voice and saw him coming to help him up, his competitive spirit was secretly aroused. He wanted to see if he had real skills or was just using his voice to scare people. Who knew that he didn't even have the strength to resist and was lifted up just like that? Yuan Fei couldn't help but be shocked. What great strength! His gaze swept past the sword hanging on Shi Xiaotian's waist. No wonder he was brought up in such a manner. Seeing their commander stand up, the soldiers also stood up. Yuan Fei waved his hand and said, "Third young master, please." "You're welcome." Shi Xiaotian cupped his hands and walked forward under Yuan Fei's lead. Yu Qianqiu followed behind dejectedly. Stepping into the myriad flower house, Yuan Fei stayed outside to continue guarding while the pimp led the master and servant in. The lanterns were lit and the myriad flower house was filled with guests. Alluring women were walking around with plates of fruits, wine, and all kinds of delicacies. Hearing that the third young master of the National Pillar General's residence had arrived, the nobles who were already seated gathered downstairs to greet him. In terms of status and rank, there was no need to greet him. Many of the nobles had a higher rank than the National Pillar General. However, he was the one who held the strongest military power in the empire. He was someone who could make the entire Huaxia Empire tremble with a stomp of his foot. He was much stronger than those nobles who only had titles in name only. Shi Xiaotian gracefully greeted the crowd. One moment it was that little prince, the next moment it was this little prince. Shi Xiaotian handled the situation with ease. Yu Qianqiu nodded to himself. As expected of someone from the upper class. Today, he had finally witnessed the power of the National Pillar General's residence. He had a new plan in mind. They were in an enclosure, with a big performance stage in the middle. There were 2 levels of seats for spectators. The upper level was an open single room, while the lower level was a circle of single-table banquets. This should be the place where the courtesan Belle would sing and dance tonight to celebrate peace and prosperity. Shi Xiaotian arrived late. The single room upstairs had already been occupied. However, there was no need to worry. Naturally, there were people who knew their place and left one for him. The 2 of them were in a single room on the 2nd floor, one sitting and one standing. The one standing behind Shi Xiaotian was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. A servant couldn't possibly sit with his master in public, could he? Wan Hualu had arranged for some prostitutes to come over. However, Yu Qianqiu felt that they were too unattractive. He found an excuse that the third young master didn't want to be disturbed and chased them out. He was used to seeing beauties in the cultivation world. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the so-called beauties here. If it wasn't for the fact that he still wanted to see the courtesan that everyone was fighting for, he might have turned around and left. Soon, the performance on the central stage began. For a moment, the sound of zither, flute, and drums rang out. More than a dozen graceful women danced gracefully, causing the crowd to cheer. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that they were going to do a striptease or something. Who knew that after wandering around for a long time, there wasn't anything interesting at all. One group after another went down, and another group changed into different styles. They didn't have the awareness of a brothel at all. He really didn't understand why those princes and nobles were cheering. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could throw a grenade down and let those women who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws quickly get off the stage. He wanted that courtesan to come up and take a look as soon as possible. If she didn't look good, then they should leave as soon as possible to avoid wasting time. This brothel was too boring. The music played by those musicians didn't have any passion at all. When it fell into his ears, it was like a lullaby. It made him sleepy and yawn repeatedly. After an unknown amount of time, just as he was in a semi-conscious state, the commotion around him woke him up. The lonely and light sound of the zither entered his ears, and it was quite refreshing. When he looked again, the surrounding princes and nobles were all leaning against the railings to watch. "The courtesan is coming out," Shi Xiaotian said softly. He also walked to the railings to watch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for the stars and the moon. Finally, it was here. He also followed. In the depths of the lanterns, a figure dressed in a light gauze and thin red palace dress leisurely walked over. A long white jade hairpin was inserted into her jet black hair bun. The two ends of the hairpin were pulled up by a red veil that covered her face. Her pretty face was faintly discernible. It was hard to see clearly, but it was exceptionally alluring. Her white and tender lily-white hands were hugging a plain zither. One side of her ample chest was lightly pressed against it, making the other side even more abruptly perky. The red veil covered her perky buttocks, trying to cover her slender jade legs. However, the boundless spring scenery was always inadvertently revealed when her jade legs strode forward. The beauty dressed in red lightly walked onto the stage. She put down the jade zither on the table that had already been set up by someone. She nodded slightly to the surrounding people and then sat down peacefully. The red veil on both sides of her buttocks was quietly pulled open, revealing her white and tender thighs. "Good!" Someone clapped and shouted. Immediately, it caused a loud commotion. Everyone agreed one after another. Yu Qianqiu finally became spirited. He clapped with all his might. Damn it! He finally saw someone who was pleasing to the eye. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, just based on her figure alone, it was already top-notch. The single room for the two of them was in a good position. The courtesan happened to be facing the two of them, so they could slowly admire her. 10 jade-like fingers pressed down on the strings of the zither, gently evoking a quiet and exquisite sound. The surroundings immediately quietened down. Yu Qianqiu nodded. At first, he sounded a little sad, but it was still a little interesting. At least he was able to continue listening. The sound of the zither reverberated faintly. The face under the red veil suddenly sang softly, "I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness, The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face instantly froze. Then, it started to twitch. Chapter 221. It was a completely different tune from the Hua Xia Empire, with a different style and singing style. However, it was undeniable that it was indeed pleasant to the ears. It was completely different from the current high-pitched tunes that were popular. It was simple and mellow, yet moving. Even those ignorant and incompetent hedonistic sons could immediately understand the meaning behind it. Gradually, the image of a white fox trapped in love for 1,000 years appeared in everyone's mind. White fox. Shi Xiaotian's face was also filled with shock. How did this popular tune in the cultivation world spread to the myriad flower house in the secular world? Moreover, the person who composed this tune was right beside him. The two of them looked at each other, completely losing the mood to look at beauties. They looked at the Huakue again. Although they couldn't be sure, they had a feeling that the other party was sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. This Huakue was probably not simple. The surrounding nobles had previously been drooling over the Huakue's beauty, but now they were completely immersed in the Huakue's singing. Even after the song ended, they still couldn't extricate themselves. After a long time, their exclamations turned into cheers. They all felt that this trip was not in vain, so they rewarded the Huakue with gold and silver ingots. However, the Huakue seemed to be indifferent to the praises and rewards of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were no longer in the mood to stay. They turned around and were about to leave quietly. Suddenly, a coquettish voice transmitted into Yu Qianqiu's ears. "I didn't expect that the abandoned disciple of Fuxian Island that the entire cultivation alliance is looking for would actually be involved with the pillar of the state generals." Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and suddenly turned to look at the Huakue downstairs. Who else could it be if not her who was able to sing the white fox? The other party could actually transmit a voice. It was clear that her cultivation was above the tribulation stage. No wonder he couldn't tell. Who was this person? Unfortunately, his cultivation was not at the stage where he could transmit a voice. He couldn't question her in public, could he? He could only reveal a stern and questioning gaze. Seeing his reaction, Shi Xiaotian also stopped. He didn't know what he was going to do. Yo! The third son of the National Pillar General was actually an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, Yu Qianqiu, you've really found a good hiding place. Yu Qianqiu heard Hua Kuei's laughter again. Don't look at me like that. You want to know who I am? Then let's meet at the top of the highest mountain in the western suburbs of the capital. Come quickly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the Cultivation Alliance won't find out about the relationship between you and the National Pillar General's residence, hee. After Hua Kuei finished transmitting her voice, she picked up her zither and quietly walked away amidst the cries of pain from the crowd. She only left the crowd with a graceful and extremely alluring back view. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet, asking everywhere why the Oiran Queen left after just one song. No one could answer. Those who wanted to use force were also stopped by others. Since Myriad Flower Tower was able to establish itself in the Hua Xia Empire, they naturally had a powerful background or strength to back them up. They weren't people they could afford to offend just because they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes as he watched Hua Kuei leave. He whispered into Shi Xiaotian's ear, I have something to attend to. I'll be heading out first. You play by yourself. With that, he left quietly. Shi Xiaotian looked at the departing Hua Kuei, then at the departing Yu Qianqiu. He sat down thoughtfully. After leaving Myriad Flower Tower, Yu Qianqiu found an empty alley and released a flying sword out of thin air. He stepped on the sword and quickly flew towards the western suburbs. The people of the capital naturally couldn't see it in the dark. Even if they did see a stream of light, they would think it was a dazzling light. The highest mountain in the western suburbs was steep. It should be a place with few people. On the mountain, the chirping of insects could be heard. The silver moonlight covered the mountain peak. The rocks on the mountain peak were exposed and could be considered flat. As the mountain wind blew, a few old pine trees swayed under the moonlight. Yu Qianqiu landed on his sword. He flipped the sword in his hand and carefully looked around. Even if the other party was an expert at the end of the tribulation stage, he was confident that he could escape. It wasn't a big place. Under the moonlight, it was clear that the other party hadn't arrived yet. The terrain at the foot of the mountain was dangerous. In the depths of the forest, it seemed a little eerie. Yu Qianqiu looked at the dim lights of the capital. He stood on the mountain peak and welcomed the mountain wind. He held his sword with both hands and quietly waited for the arrival of Myriad Flower Tower's Hua Kuei. Ding ding dong dong. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He suddenly turned around and his gaze fell on the few old pine trees. A woman wrapped in a red veil sat on the top of the tree and played the zither. Who else could it be other than that Hua Kuei? Damn it. Trying to scare me. Aren't you afraid of pricking your butt while wearing so little? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? How do you know me? Hua Kuei didn't answer. Instead, she played the zither and sang, Yesterday was like the flowing river in the east, far away from me. Today, my heart is in chaos, how troublesome. Did you ask me to come here just to listen to you play and sing? Yu Qianqiu waved his sword and pointed at her. Hua Kuei was completely focused. It was as if she was deeply immersed in her own song. Only when the song was finished did she open her fingers and press on the zither to stop the lingering sound. She sighed and said, Yu Qianqiu, I heard that the song I played and sang today was composed by you. Crazy. Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, So what if I composed it? So what if I didn't? Nothing much. On the treetop, Hua Kuei's figure flashed, and under the moonlight, he suddenly appeared beside Yu Qianqiu, leaving behind several afterimages. The latter was startled, and he fiercely jumped back. Whoosh! Nearly 100 flying swords suddenly appeared, and they protected him from all directions. Hua Kuei, who was holding the zither, was startled. She didn't see how Yu Qianqiu could produce so many flying swords at once. She also didn't see him carrying a storage bag. She chuckled and said, What are you nervous about? But you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill the sect master of Anquangsung. I'm a little curious. How could that half-baked Hao Wuwei teach a disciple like you? That's right, he might have learned it on supporting Immortal Island. But how Wu Wei doesn't know how to play the zither or sing? What do you mean by good or bad? I don't know him. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. You don't know Hao Wu Wei? Oh. Hee, I get it. You should know the House Sansi of An Kuangsung, right? Isn't he your master? Hua Kuei laughed. What does my master have to do with you? Hua Kuei smiled and said, I heard that you offended the sect master of An Kuangsung because of your master's death. That's why you joined supporting Immortal Island. Yes. You beat up the grandson of the sect master of An Kuangsung in the 100 Flowers Valley. Then, you beat up the son of the Deluo sect master at Hat Island. Then, you killed Lu Chongqing and his grandson. It looks like you're still brooding over the death of your master, House Sansi. Sigh. I didn't expect House Sansi to have taken in a good disciple. He's always thinking about avenging his master. It's only right for a disciple to avenge his master. There's no need for you to flatter him. I find it strange. You didn't invite me here to have a heart-to-heart talk, did you? Yu Qianqiu sneered. Only right? Hee. House Sansi has finally done something right in this life, so his death isn't unjust. Hua Kuei giggled again, laughing so hard that his body trembled. Su Qin, who was in her arms, stood on the ground. She lifted an arm and removed the veil that was tied to her hairpin. Her charming face smiled at Yu Qianqiu. So familiar. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He searched his mind and suddenly remembered a person. He couldn't help but exclaim, You're the 100 Charms Enchantress of the Demon Illusion Palace? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.